Hello coders, today we're going to be talking about a public speaking platform called Notist. I'm joined today by Drew McLellan, who is the co-founder of Notist, also a co-founder of Perch CMS and the publisher of 24 Ways. Hi Drew, how are you doing? Have you had a good week?
Hi Peter, yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm having a pretty good week. I've just got back from a week in San Francisco at Smashing Conf over there.
Nice.
So I'm feeling a little bit more relaxed than I was before, and I've been enjoying the Californian sunshine. And ready to be back at it this week.
I've been seeing your tweets, and you've been doing a lot of running out there as well.
Yes, we organised a conference run every morning. My wife Rachel and I are keen runners, and so we thought, as an alternative to getting people out to the parties after the conference, where you can meet and socialise over a beer and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The other side of it is get up early in the morning and meet other conference attendees and go for a run. So we ran along the waterfront towards the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco.
That is so cool. Do you personally do a lot of like races and events and stuff like that in terms of running?
Yeah, from time to time, I've done a couple of marathons,
just
few
the
half marathons all the time.
Nice.
And yeah, I like to sort of keep myself half marathon ready, so that a drop of a hat, I could just go off and do a half marathon. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Awesome. Well, perhaps one day we'll talk about sort of like the exercise side of web development. That's so cool. I like the fact that you're traveling everywhere and you're running as well. That's such an awesome thing. So today we're going to be talking about your Notist public speaking portfolio platform. It's a portfolio platform for public speakers. They can upload their slides, and there's a social element to that as well, which I think is awesome. What makes Notist different, though, to other platforms such as perhaps, Speaker Deck or things like that?
Yeah, well, I guess the two sort of big things that are out there are Speaker Deck, as you mentioned, and also SlideShare, which is part of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And what both those platforms do is they both pretty much do the same job of allowing a public speaker to upload like a PDF of their slides from a presentation, and they turn it into something that can be presented on the web, and that you can create an embed of to put into a blog post.
Yeah.
And you can send the link out to attendees.
Right.
But they pretty much both just sort of stop there.
Right.
Generally speaking, that's the limitation. They're a feature rather than an entire product, I would say. And that feature is taking a PDF and turning it into some images that can be displayed on the web.
Yes.
Now, that's a really useful feature. And if you're a public speaker, that's a useful thing that you need. But my co-founder and wife Rachel and I are both public speakers. She much more than I am. She's on the road 6 months of the year speaking at conferences. Yeah. We both felt the need for something that went a little bit beyond just sharing your slides online. And we also, in using those products, and we've both used both of those particular products, we found that there were some sort of slight annoyances and deficiencies that we thought, we could do this a bit better.
Yes.
And so that's where the idea came from, not just to upload a PDF and share slides, but to create more of a site that could represent an individual as a public speaker. So I kind of think of it, if somebody asked you, what are your contributions to open source software or something like that, you might say, go and look at my GitHub profile. Or they might say, what's your photography like? I see you with a camera all the time. You might say, go to my Instagram profile, and there you'll find everything about you'll find all my photography.
Sure.
Notist kind of is like that for public speaking.
Right.
Somebody says, what conferences have you spoken at before?
Yeah.
So, here's the URL. Here's the list. You can see everything that I've done.
Yeah. I was checking it out earlier, and I just got lost in a rabbit hole of looking through the slides and then finding another talk that speaker had spoken at, and then also you have the tweets below it. So you kind of feel like, even though you weren't part of the conversation at that particular time, you can actually see the conversations around that particular slide, which I think is pretty awesome. I do this with YouTube a lot, where I watch a video and then I get recommended another video, and then before I know it, 3 hours have gone and I've watched a video on how hamsters do some crazy trick. It was kind of like that, where it was sort of like I went through one slide, a slide deck, and then I found another slide deck of the same speaker, and you kind of got a feel for the talks that particular speaker had done in a very sort of portfolio-esque kind of way. And it presented that information really well. Whereas, like you said, with Speaker Deck and SlideShare and stuff, it is less of that. It's more sort of like, this is the set of talks or set of slides that I did for that particular talk, but it's not joined. You don't have that sort of connection between the other talks that speaker has done. So yeah, I mean, is there any other particular features that make Notist stand out compared to the other platforms?
Yeah, well, that presentation page, as we call it, is a really key aspect of what we do. So rather than just sharing your slides, we enable presenters to collate any resources. So if they've mentioned websites or books or anything like that in a presentation, they can actually add those as annotations underneath.
Oh, that's super handy. Yeah, that is super handy. Yeah, because often I'll look at a slide and they've just got like they'll have a slide that has perhaps a list of links, but you can't do anything with that unless you actually type out the link in the URL in the address bar. That is really, really handy, just having those links accessible there. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm liking that.
You can, if it's a sort of development, tech-based presentation, you can embed CodePen embeds or gists or from GitHub or any of these things. You can put those right in the page.
Oh, that is so cool. Yeah, that makes it so interactive.
If you've got a video, which these days so many presentations are actually videoed and then the event share them afterwards. If you've got that, you can embed the video in the page, which is really, really handy.
Yeah, because I know that some speakers, they'll do like they'll video themselves writing code to get around the whole live demo type thing, and they'll start and stop the video at certain points and then talk through what's actually happened. So that would be really handy if there was that sort of linkage to perhaps YouTube, or where they can actually access that video. Again, if they were just doing it through a slide, then it would be very static. Yeah, so for that scenario, one of the really neat things we do is once you've uploaded your deck, you can go into any particular slide and say, right, I want to replace this slide with a video, or I want to replace it with an animated GIF, or I want to just upload a replacement. I've noticed a typo in this one slide, and I want to upload a replacement without having to replace the entire thing. Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So we've got those sorts of features as well that just make, they're just content management features essentially, which makes life a bit easier.
So you can actually go in and pick and choose and remove and replace slides within your slide show. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That must be, the technology behind that must be really sort of complicated when you're having to deal with all those different media types and stuff. What kind of technology is under that?
So the whole thing is built on a PHP platform, because PHP is sort of what I know and do and am familiar with. Our content management system product that we also have is PHP. Yeah. And really, Notist from a technical point of view is just a big content management system,
right?
But for a specific purpose. Yeah. So I built it as a system to manage presentations. So yes, we're actually using, for anyone familiar with the sort of PHP ecosystem, we're using Slim framework. Which is a really bare bones PHP framework, and then just pulling in lots of different bits from Composer, lots of different packages. And I'm just, rather than using a full stack framework where you get everything included,
Mm-hmm.
I'm using something that's really bare bones and then picking and choosing the bits that I want.
So you went for a micro framework first. That's interesting. How did you find that? Did you find that there was more upfront configuration because you were using the bare bones, as you say, rather than have other packages sort of there waiting for you to use?
Yes, I mean, it's got an awful lot of advantages because I have then complete control over what I'm using.
Yes.
But the downside of that is I have complete control over everything, and I've got to do the work of integrating everything.
Yeah.
I mean, if you use Laravel, for example, you would have session management right there ready to go.
Sure.
When I wanted session management, I had to think, right, what am I going to use for session management?
Right.
Evaluate all the options. Find the one I wanted to use, then work out how to fit it in nicely with Slim.
Right.
And in the end, after all that, am I sure I've got the best session management solution? I don't know. I mean, it works. Yeah. It works nicely, but that was quite a lot of work to give me that flexibility. So there are definitely downsides to taking that approach.
Right.
But the upside is I know there's very little code in the code base that isn't doing something.
That's true. Yeah.
And that limits the sort of attack surface for security flaws because there's not code sat that could be exploited.
Yeah.
It just limits the complexity. It limits the number of moving parts that I have to be aware of in terms of updates and compatibility and things.
Yeah.
But it brings with it its own complexities. So I think you just sort of make your choice and and go with it.
Well,
and,
I guess
see where it takes you.
Yeah, I guess because there isn't the packages that are just sat there dormant. You are in complete control, and also you must be completely aware of everything in all of the dependencies because it was you who put the dependencies there.
Yes. But of course, then I've got to keep track of that and remember. Yeah. And every time I change something, I have to think, what are the implications going to be? That when you've got a sort of fully featured framework, somebody else is taking care of those problems for you.
Yeah. What's the technology like on the front end? Does it use any kind of JavaScript type frameworks or anything like that?
So I looked at all the different ways of doing it. So the way that we did things with Perch in its control panel for our CMS was that, because that's been going nearly 10 years now.
Yep.
And the interface that is HTML, CSS, and jQuery.
Right. Okay.
And jQuery has done us a great job.
Yeah.
But that was the sort of place my day-to-day development was coming from. And so I thought, well, jQuery, that's a bit old hat, isn't it? I should be looking to see what else is out there. And I looked at React, and I've looked a little bit at Vue, and I've looked at Angular, and the main players.
Yeah.
And I decided what I really needed was HTML and CSS, and then just a sprinkling of bits of JavaScript wherever JavaScript was needed. So I'm just literally writing vanilla JavaScript with no framework.
I love that.
For the little bits where it's needed.
I love that.
Just trying to use as little JavaScript as possible.
Yeah.
Now, there are bits of the application that we're finding now. So, as you mentioned earlier, on a presentation page, you can search Twitter and add tweets. So, if audience members have been tweeting, you can actually pull that in, almost like social proof that you gave a good presentation.
Yeah.
So, you can pull all that sort of stuff in onto your page. So, the interface for adding those tweets is basically a HTML form, and you put the URL of the tweet in, and it, adds it, and it's just like a standard old-fashioned web post-back interface. Now, that's not very slick. I think we could probably do a better job of that. Right. So I'm looking at this point, maybe probably leaning towards Vue as a framework, just to start using it for specific page components to say, right, this interface for adding tweets, I'm going to do something a bit more interactive, and I'll just target that. But I'm not looking at moving the entire interface into JavaScript, because really, I don't think it needs it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what I love about Vue. It's the fact that you can just sort of really pinpoint a specific component on your application and go, I'm using Vue for that. I'm not using Vue for anything else, just for that little thing. So it's not like this whole encompassing sort of massive monolithic framework. That's super cool. So, how many slides do you have? How many slides do you actually host and hold on this platform?
So in terms of presentations, I mean, we launched last year at some point, last summer. So we're sort of with conferences tend to run in seasons. You'll have like an autumn season and a spring season.
Right.
So we're kind of into our second season at the moment with spring. So we were there for autumn, and we're really starting to get a bit of head of steam here with this spring. So we're up to about 5,500 presentations that are on the system.
Gosh.
I mean, in terms of actual slides, I did look this up. We've got 130,000 slides.
Oh my word! Wow.
And 400,000 images I'm managing so far.
Gosh. Wow.
Which is quite interesting. But we've also got 1,000 videos on there.
Right.
And we've got a categorization system. So I'm sure you're familiar with the process of adding content to some sort of system, and you have to pick a category. Mm-hmm. So like if you're writing a blog post, what category does this blog post? And they never seem to fit in any of the, you think it's in this category, is that? And you have a list of like 12 and you think, well, which of these is it? So we didn't want to go down that route. Mm-hmm. So instead, what we do is we actually analyze the content of the presentation. So we extract all the text from any PDFs.
Yeah.
We also extract the description and things that you put in about a presentation. And that gets compared to all the keywords that get compared to Wikipedia articles. Right. And we come up with topics based on those Wikipedia articles to create this sort of whole topic schema for the site. Wow. And we've got 12,000 different topics that you can browse by now.
Wow. I guess is that self-updating when Wikipedia updates?
It's not self-updating. We just categorize each presentation as it comes in against the current sort of corpus of topics.
I love that. Yeah.
So, and then we rank all those topics, and we have an interface that displays the most prominent ones. So I was amazed just browsing it because this happens automatically. You end up with, you find like, we've got all these presentations about mental health, or we've got these presentations about, this niche of about is it I don't even know how to pronounce it, Kubernetes. Yeah. Well, I don't even know what that is. It seems to do with Docker, right?
Right. Yeah.
We've got a presentation page about it on the site.
That's
with
fantastic.
Dozens and dozens of presentations and videos, and so pretty much any topic that you're interested in, you can find it and then find presentations to watch live video of if you want. It's great. It's worked really well. It surprised me how well that topic system works.
Yeah, that is wonderful, because taxonomy is something that is really tricky to sort of either create a schema for, because you've always got, well, is this a child of that parent tag and all of this jazz, and then you've got the languageization of tags, which is just nuts when you're dealing with different diacriticals and all of that jazz. But yeah, I'm really liking the fact that you've just used Wikipedia to solve that issue. That was, I mean, if they've done it, why can't you use it? That's fantastic. I really like that. How did you come up with that solution? I mean, what was the thought process?
I knew that we wanted to look at the content of the presentations and not ask humans to categorize their own stuff. Because if you ask humans to do it, it's boring. And you'll end up with, I mean, for us at the moment, we're quite heavy on web technology presentations. So you'd end up with everything categorized as, web technology, web development or whatever, which then a category with too much stuff in it becomes useless, because it's just an enormous bucket that doesn't really tell you anything. Yeah. So we knew we wanted to analyze what was in it. And so it was just a process from there, thinking, okay, well, how can we come up with something that would describe this based on the content? So that's where we got, and I'm sure we'll improve it. But I found that it's turned the site into something I never thought it would be, which is a learning resource. If I wanted to find out about a particular thing, I can go and find presentations on that topic, regardless of who the presenter is. I don't, or what event it was at.
Yeah.
I don't really care at that point. I can just see here's some high quality, content, and I can find it on the topic that I'm interested in, which is great.
Well, I must say, when I was looking at it earlier, it was vast. It was like you would go from one presentation to another presentation, and you would be put on this journey of discovery. Hats off to you for coming up with that solution for tags, because that's obviously really helped.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the SEO like on that? I mean, when you're dealing with all of those things, how have you managed that?
So it's still a little bit early, I think, to see how that'll pan out, because we're in relative terms a brand new site. So I am trying to use all the topic information as then keywords, and adding there's a JSON format, isn't there? Is it JSON LD or something like that? That
I don't know.
For SEO purposes, there's a chunk of JSON that you can put into a page, which basically adds like it works as metadata describing the document, and Google and others will parse that and use that to categorize what you've got. So it's kind of like a modern replacement for the old meta tags.
Oh, is that like what's it called? Rich snippets? Is that right?
I think it's related to all the same things. Yeah, anyone who really knows this stuff will be hammering on the desk at the moment, saying,
"Yeah, because you could do."
These guys don't know what they're talking about.
I'm sure you can do things that will tell, like Google, how to present your results in the Google page. So, for example, if it was an event, you could, or a product, it could have a price and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. One of the sort of things related to that that I work quite hard on is the social media sharing images,
right?
Which can be quite a tricky thing when you've got just dynamic user-generated content. What happens when somebody tweets a link to that content? Twitter and Facebook and all these social platforms will go to the site and try and fetch an image to display along with it, and you want to make sure that image really represents the content in a nice way and isn't something generic. So I've worked quite hard on that, particularly on our topic pages. If somebody tweets a link to the page about JavaScript, what we actually show is what I call a slide pile, which is a page of presentation thumbnails arranged in a nice way to get them to all fit nicely on a grid. And that's dynamically constructed, and they're periodically updated.
Wow.
So you should get a little preview that when you click through, you see the same content then in the listing. That is so cool. I mean, often I go and see a website where you have that Facebook image or that Twitter card image, and it's completely irrelevant to the actual article that you're reading, or it's just someone's logo. Yeah. I mean, for a standard presentation page, normally that's easy because you've got the first slide of the presentation, and you can just use that as the sharing image, and that works quite well. And if it's a link to somebody's profile, we've got a profile picture for them, and we can show that. But it's where it's these sort of dynamic listings of things. Similarly, I've not implemented yet, but I'm going to do the same for an event page that shows you all the presentations that happened at that event. Do the same thing. Get the thumbnails of each and arrange them into a nice grid. And we had to design grids that would work for events with one image, with one item, 2 items, 3 items, 4 items. I've got custom grids all the way up to about 12.
Wow!
To get nice artistic looking arrangements of slides.
One thing I was going to ask you was around the tags and the types of talks, because you mentioned that you have topics now that are that you didn't think you would have. So does this mean that non-developers can use this product for just displaying like a presentation that they might use at work, for example?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyone can add anything on any topic.
Right.
It happens that it's pretty web development heavy at the moment because Rachel and I we're web developers and our sort of social reach is in that field. So that's sort of where we've started. But there's no reason that you couldn't put a standard business presentation. If you were presenting at a medical conference, you could have that. The site's completely agnostic of topic of presentation. Which I think is quite. Then with the topics scenario, as long as it's represented on Wikipedia, we can categorize it nicely. So that should be okay too.
That's interesting, very interesting, because I know around the medical profession there is a lot of conferences where there is, obviously these slides. They don't have obviously live demos that we have because they're medical professions, but they still need the slides, and there is this this sort of disconnect as to where they put that. Is it slide deck or speaker deck or whatever? And I was speaking to someone in the medical profession the other day, and they wanted to bring in the conversation around the slides because they were speaking at this conference, and there was a lot of talk and stuff at that conference, and then everyone flew home, and bringing back all that content into a single place was quite challenging because there was lots of these medical journals that were referenced and so forth, but there wasn't any sort of like single repository of information that this fella could sort of hand out. So yeah, that's really, really interesting. I might point him in that direction, in your direction, if that's all right, as a solution, because that's let's tick that box. Because I suggested perhaps build a web page and then have all the links on that web page, and then just tweet the URL of that web page. But you don't want to be doing that for every conference you go to. You want to have a platform that allows you to do all that and not be restrained to where the conversation goes. Do you allow things like links to, say, Facebook groups or Facebook pages and stuff like that?
We don't particularly facilitate that, but there's nothing to stop anybody doing those things.
Right.
The descriptions for a presentation and for an event, if you're adding an event to the system, are all just marked down, and you can put in any links and anything like that you want to in the simplest form.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we've got the tools for adding resources and things to presentations, and you could represent those in that form as well. So yeah, all that is possible to do.
Right.
When you add a presentation into the system, you state the event that it's at, and if you're the first person to say to name that event, then that event gets created, and you specify the dates, and you can add a description, and you can even add a sort of a link to buy tickets and a call to action that's register here or buy tickets whatever.
Okay.
And an event hashtag is the other thing that you can add.
Yes.
So you can do that, and then you just automatically get an events page which collates all the presentations for that event automatically and gives you a nice URL for it. And you can even address it by its hashtag if you need to. So that's the sort of limit of our events capability at the moment, because as we're starting, we're focusing on the presenters and creating a really good experience for somebody who speaks at conferences to give them the tools that they need.
Right.
Possibly a future phase then is to focus more on the people who organize the events and give them tools that they need as well to work with that.
Yes.
So that that's a sort of possible sort of future next step. It'd probably be quite an obvious way to move things forward.
Well, I'm already thinking of features and all of that. Yes, that's I can see how this can grow in a very organic way as well, with an organizer of an event claiming an event through some form of verification, and then sort of making it in a sort of a packaging it up in a marketing kind of way.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these event sites that perhaps aren't web development events, they either use like Eventos or other paid event sort of things where they can list their events, but they don't have much control over how the package actually looks. And of course, there's fees involved and all that. I mean, what's the payment plans like on Notist?
So one of the things we're really keen on doing is making sure that right from launching that we had a good business model that meant if people were going to put time into adding stuff to the site, they had relative confidence that it was a model that would carry on. It could be self-sustaining. So we do have free accounts, and the free accounts you can add up to 5 presentations in a calendar year.
Right.
So that's aimed at people who speak at local meetups from time to time and just do a bit of casual public speaking. They can use it for free.
Right.
Then we have our pro accounts, which are $9 a month, or I think it's $99 a year.
Okay.
If you sign up for a year, you get effectively get a month free.
Right.
And that includes then lots more features. Obviously, no limits on how much you could post, but you get more advanced editing features. You get the ability to sort of pre-announce that you're going to be at an event rather than it just appearing when the event comes around. So it creates a sort of future listing for super fans. They can see, this person's going to be speaking at this event and go buy their ticket.
So you can build up a hype for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can add, if you're a pro member, you can have a custom domain. So you can point a CNAME at us and we'll register you an SSL certificate. And basically then you have a custom URL that all your presentations live at. Wow. So in the future, if you decided to move away from us, you could keep control of all those URLs and make sure that they still work for whatever it is you decide to do in the future.
That's cool. Yeah.
So there's lots of sort of extra options and niceties for people who want to pay to make sure that we stick around and want to pay because it's part of their job. There are so many people who speak at conferences as a fairly major part of their work.
Yes.
And so for those people, we have paid for accounts.
Excellent.
Or just for anyone who likes what we do and wants to support us, they're welcome to pay too.
Sure, of course. So what kind of features do you plan for say the next year or when the next season, say, of conferences come around next year? What do you want to have in play by then?
So the big thing we're working on at the moment is functionality for teams.
Right.
So this would be teams of people, teams of public speakers.
Sure.
So if you think of big software companies that have developer advocate teams, who are sending people around the world to conferences all the time.
Yes.
We're adding features for those people so that when a presentation appears, it could say, it's so-and-so from such a software company, and you can click on that and see what, you can see all the presentations from everyone from that organization.
Right.
But also then for the managers who are managing those teams of developer advocates, they get an interface to see where everybody is this week, see their presentations going up, see the audience feedback, and we're logging extra information. So when you add a presentation as part of a team, you can say, the room had 350 people in it, and when I asked them who'd heard of our company, about 50% had, and you can log all these sorts of metrics that then the team manager can get reports back of those and see that, yes, we're with all these events we're going to, our audience awareness is slowly going up, or it's not going up. Or we went to that event last year and everybody had already heard of us. Do we really want to go again this year? Is it worth it? So all those sorts of things.
Yeah, so it's almost like analytics for the teams, for the people who are sending the teams out. That's so handy, so helpful. Yeah, wow. Yeah. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, and of course we log. We have basic sort of statistics. You can see how many people have viewed a presentation and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So it enables you. The other things we log are sort of anything that's expense related, and how much time that you put into preparing a presentation.
Wow.
So you could see that. I spent 4 weeks preparing this presentation, and there were 12 people in the audience, and it cost us £1,000 to attend this conference. Will I do that again?
Okay.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
So you can sort of judge that return on investment through the log statistics. And that's something that, those bigger sort of teams of people, I think really benefit from, probably more than an individual who's probably got a track of that. They've probably got a sense of that themselves if they're just an individual doing it. But it's where you've got multiple people in a team that you want to keep track of the sort of effectiveness and the return on investment and what have you with those presentations.
Wow, that's a mighty fine set of features there. Yeah, very, very handy. Have you gone out and spoken to people about this, or have you come up with these ideas yourself?
It's a bit of both. So we have been speaking to people about it, and we've got some companies, some pretty big household names sort of lined up who are interested and are potentially ready to help us test features as we roll them out.
Right.
We've got people keen to use this functionality.
Wonderful.
And I just need to get it finished.
Yeah. I guess it takes a lot of time to develop and just come up with the whole day-to-day management of it all. I guess you're having to deal with not only the writing of the code, but the DevOps side of it as well. I mean, the figures that you mentioned earlier of all the slides and the presentations that you're holding, that must have a lot of complexity along with it in terms of scaling and caching and speed and performance and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and performance is something I'm really sort of keen on, to make sure that everything is always super fast.
Yeah.
All our assets are on Azure,
right,
and served through a CDN there. So the weight of all the images, I don't need to worry about that. That's all taken care of by something else. But for everything else, we're pretty much on virtual server boxes that are in Germany. That's not all sort of cloud-based. It's just traditional VM boxes, which is working pretty well for now. We're using Beanstalk D to manage our queues. So like when a PDF goes onto a queue, then a worker picks it up and starts churning it and turning it into images and all that. So that's a sort of decoupled process that should, in theory, when we need to scale up to multiple servers, rather than just the one we have working on that queue at the moment. It's I like to keep things fast and light, and that's part of the reason for choosing a micro framework rather than a full framework, is that I just want as little code running as possible. And at the moment that seems to be holding up quite nicely.
Wow. I guess that's also why you chose vanilla JS rather than a fully fledged framework, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah, it's nice and fast on the browser. What's it like on the mobile? I haven't used it on mobiles and tablets and stuff. Is there any different functionality between that and the desktop?
Not particularly. It's just designed in a responsive way. So the aspect of just viewing presentations and everything works. I mean, like all the slide deck viewer, you can swipe it rather than tap left and right and all those sorts of things. Just the basics. In terms of actually sort of adding presentations and things, you probably want to do that on the desktop.
Right.
I haven't actually spent an awful lot of time optimizing the editing interface for mobile, because at the moment I don't think there's a huge demand for people wanting to do that. Of course, the trends are that everything is going towards mobile, so that surely will come. But at the moment, the editing sort of interface is optimized for bigger screens. But it'll work on small screens, but probably wouldn't be that user friendly.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's it sounds like an amazing platform, and it's blown my mind, because it's simply not just a upload presentations and job done. There's so much more to that, and the fact that it's growing in an organic manner and totally not locked down to things for like web developers. It could be for anyone. That's absolutely fascinating. Well, before we shoot off, is there anything else that you want to mention about Notist, or anything else in particular?
One of the features I really like about it, and this is a real web developer nerd sort of feature, is that I think almost every page on the site has got a JSON representation of it available. So if you wanted to, for example, use us as kind of like a CMS to manage all your presentations, but wanted to do something completely custom on your own website on the front end to display that content, you could just use the JSON feeds that we have to get all your content out immediately. And you could build a nice React front end, for example, that displays everything on your own website without needing anything from us. That will just, that's just all immediately available.
Oh, wow.
So I quite like that as a feature, the fact that there's JSON behind everything.
Gosh, that's insane. I like that. I really do, because you could almost use that as a back end to your own portfolio site, or you could use it like a headless CMS sort of approach of use us to do all the management, to give us give you the nice interface and everything, and then just take the JSON and build your own complete front end and do whatever you want with it. Wow.
And equally, you could have a cron job running, archiving stuff off to make sure you had your own copy, or you could use it like as a backup solution, or you could do anything you like with it. I think it's such a simple thing that we can do as web developers, because we've got all the data there. We've got easy methods of outputting JSON.
Yes.
As long as it's essentially public data that's going to be on a page anyway,
sure.
Why not make that available as a data structure that then people who want to do something with it can do something with it? I think it just opens up so many possibilities.
Yeah, well, I am definitely personally seeing a trend where people use or have JSON as well as RSS feeds, so they could have a feed of their content in the way that is presented by the website in the RSS feed, or they could have a JSON data structure that allows them to manipulate it in the way that they want to on their site. Wow. Okay, that's very, very interesting. I've got a number of questions that I'll probably ask you after this about that. That's super cool. Before we go though, Drew, where can we get to this Notist site?
So we've got one of these trendy URLs. So it's noti.st.
Excellent.
Notist. And I'm on there as Notist/Drew M.
Drew M. Awesome.
And you can find me on Twitter at Drew M as well. That's why I am in most places. But
Wonderful. Well, thank you ever so much for coming on the show and talking about Notist. I think it's an amazing platform, and you've mentioned so many things that have just opened me up to several possibilities of not only for Notist, but also just how one should manage and go about building a website that has this potential and scalability. I love the fact that you were talking about using micro frameworks because of the mission of keeping it nice, light, and simple. Thank you ever so much for coming on the show, Drew. And happy coding, everyone. I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Happy coding. Bye.